Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Greenway Forward podcast, episode 13. I know it's been 2 years since my last episode, but the podcast is still not dead, no matter what everyone says about it. I am joined by someone very special. So, who are we joining with today?
Hi, my name's Tony Dastra. I'm the Pennsylvania Green Party candidate for governor.
I am so happy to be joined by Tony. He's kind of new to the green scene, and I'm really excited for the run for governor this year as well, as someone who is taking on the establishment and someone I don't know anyone that runs against Josh Shapiro is good in my book. So, um, welcome to the podcast. So Tony, just you're here for PA. You're here to run for governor and really give Stacey Garrity and Josh Shapiro a run for their money. Why are you doing what you do? Why are you taking this on as a third party green candidate to challenge this establishment? Tell me about your ideals. Tell me about your goals. Tell me just about what does your campaign bring to the table?
Well, I'm foremost, one, thank you. And two, glad that you mentioned both Josh Shapiro and Stacey Garrity because they're like two sides of the same coin. Unfortunately, both of them are. Stacey might be trying to toe a different line right now for the election, but they're both pro data center. They're both pro genocide, essentially. Like they have worked with and accepted money from APAC. We as a state are getting sold out right now, and pretty sure you're also a Pennsylvanian, right, Brody?
Yes, yes.
So, so you live here. You've seen this stuff start to unleash upon our state, and I personally tried grappling the local situation in Lancaster. I'm still grappling the local situation. Just last night, I took the time to draft up a petition with a secondary sign up form, and I'm asking Lancaster City residents to all file a zoning appeal with me on the Planning Commission's latest approval of Phase 2. There's a whole complicated saga with the Lancaster data center story, but while I do have other beliefs and ideals, the primary function of this campaign is to get no more data centers in Pennsylvania and maybe even remove ones that have been built.
That's awesome. That's a great motivation. I feel like that's something that's also going really unsung. Is we all hear about in the news, especially recently, that Georgia family that's about to lose their home from a data center. And while I feel like it's always making the news and people are talking about it, there's really no one that's running for office that's talking about no data centers. And not even just no data centers, but there's not been a lot of opposition to data centers. No one's even saying data centers are bad. No one's even acknowledging it. Data centers are so new. The last time I had this podcast, we didn't even know what a data center was. So this is just kind of like a new concept to all of us now. And for those who are unfamiliar, you want to explain just what data centers are, what is the impact, and what you're gonna plan to do to tackle those.
Yeah, sure. So, uh, different like conversations to be had, and I apologize. Just one moment.
You're all
Hey,
good.
I'm sorry. We're recording down here. Um, so there's two different conversations to be had about data centers. One, we have AI and we have data centers, right? These conversations overlap, but they are not the exact same thing. Um, we understand that innovation is a great thing. All right. Since this closed out, we're just gonna get rid of the laptop screen there. But we understand that data centers have been foundational for operating things like Facebook. The words data center are somewhat misleading in themselves. We are cutting off part of what we're fighting, which is hyperscale AI data centers, which are also surveillance centers.
Mm-hmm.
Like we as Americans are under the assault of our Fourth Amendment rights. They're using data centers to aggregate all this information about us through devices like flock cameras, these corporations, and the way they've tracked us for years. We've all signed these terms of services just to use technology,
Mm-hmm.
and now we are being pilfered and profited off of. Our identities extracted and used to generate slop.
Mm-hmm.
The issue for Pennsylvania we're being targeted very viciously by these developers because our municipal system and a lack of leadership makes us a perfect target.
Mhm. Can you elaborate more on that about both of those two, why it makes Pennsylvania such a unique case?
Yeah, so Pennsylvania, now I'm not well versed on every single other state, but what I've come to understand about Pennsylvania is our municipal system is unique. We have 67 counties and I believe 2,559 individual
Why
municipalities.
do you know that?
Well, I try to know some stuff. I am running for governor. Um, each of those municipalities has their own identity, their own government, their own ability for local control. And so it's a chain of command, right? Like the states are creatures of the nation in a
Mhm.
sense. Our constitution defines like the hard limits for what our states can't do. So then our states, in the same way the state relates to the nation, our counties are the creature of the state as well as our municipalities. The municipalities and counties sometimes are like, depending on where you're at, one's more powerful than the other. In fact, we do have one city county, which is the common form of local government throughout the country, which is a city county or a county government being the base form of representation. Philadelphia is a city county. They, over a long period of time, actually merged their local municipalities one by one. And I believe in 1960, they finally became a city county government, and they are the only first class city in the state of Pennsylvania. When your local elected leaders don't know what they're doing and they're scared easily by big wallets because they've been conditioned in this business mindset, but they don't understand that we're being taken advantage of, they sell out. And repeatedly across Pennsylvania, I've seen local communities sell out. And what's crazy about this circumstance with the hyperscale AI surveillance centers is that we have impacts across municipal lines. And I've seen municipal leaders try and shut out those additional people. But it's like, hey, you're talking about pulling millions of gallons of water from the watershed that I still use. Like
Mhm.
I went to Cumberland County, Middlesex Township. I saw their meeting. They said no one who's not in Middlesex Township can speak, but that's still part of the Susquehanna River Basin watershed. So like that's still water upstream that impacts me downstream. And what's crazy about all of this, our state constitution, Article 1, Section 27, it dictates that we have the rights, we own the natural resources of the state of Pennsylvania. The government simply holds them in trust. We're supposed to trust the government to essentially divvy out our resources as development comes. Like we are the owners and they are part of this transaction, but they don't own it themselves. No one person in Pennsylvania owns the right to control the water, the air, the scenic and aesthetic beauty of the state. And I think that word trust, a public trust, is important because right now we have a crisis of public trust, not just nationally, not just statewide, but here in Lancaster, for example, it's very much a local issue. So what good is it to have our natural resources held in trust by the government if we can't trust them and we can't recall our elected officials like other states can?
Mhm. I think that's a really good point. Just we're already in the midst of a climate crisis. By when we're recording this right now, mid-July, Pennsylvania was one of the states that was really highly impacted by those Canadian wildfires. And I know at least going out over this past weekend was not very fun, and it really gave people the sense of like, hey, if we don't solve what's going on now, this isn't going to be a thing that makes the news because it's going to happen every single day. You think that haze in the sky was ugly? You think it was choking your lungs to breathe that in? Get prepared to have that happen every single day. And I'm really glad that you just again, I've not really seen any other politician talk about AI data centers and the danger that it causes. Every time that I have actually, it's always followed by support or it's followed by yes. And I really hope that one day uh, lobbying from the AI data centers and AI software companies is seen on the same level as receiving money from APAC and receiving money from big oil, because truly we are in the midst of an unprecedented climate collapse, and these data centers, which have been, again, last time I recorded this podcast was 2 years ago, and we didn't even know what an AI data center was back then. How quickly this is progressing and how quickly this is starting to impact everything has gotten so scary that who knows when we're, looking at this podcast a year in the future in July 2027, just how far are AI data centers going to go? Just how far is this going to go? Especially with an upcoming election. It's not a federal election, it's a midterm, but still, even numbered election year, a lot of chances for AI companies to buy out and cause these politicians to sell out to them. And I'm really scared for what's going on. You hear about these bigger cases like the family down in Georgia losing their house to an AI data center. But what's going to happen when eminent domain kicks in? Because you can't say no to eminent domain. That's the
Yep.
problem. The government, if they are dead set on building on your property for an AI data center, you can't say no to eminent domain. So that's just a really scary possibility, and I'm glad that that's one of your top priorities. Even your pin on there, it's awesome. I think that a lot more people need to be speaking out against that, and especially someone running for the governor's seat. Oh, Greens don't run for governor. Well, here we go. This is what we got right here, and I just really appreciate that this is kind of a route that you're taking for this and leading with that and the anti-genocide stance is two really big things, because obviously my big two are the genocide going on and then the climate collapse, but also the anti-genociders are such a big portion of the incoming climate collapse that you can pretty much just sort of lump those into two. So really appreciate your stances on AI data centers, but what else has really motivated you to stick with the Greens and run as a Green, and some of your other political stances, and what just made you start on your Green Party journey, just to ask?
So I've been involved in local politics for about 10 years. And actually, I think the story of how I got involved connects to where we're at with data centers. So I'll just tell it. So when I was younger, when I was 19, I found out, maybe I was still 18, I found out that my great grandmother had lymphoma. I had a choice to make. I learned the opportunity cost conversation in microeconomics. Didn't do great in the class, but I remember that conversation. And I sat there with myself and went, okay, I can either stay in school and feel aimless about where I'm going, or I could take this last year I have. I didn't know it would be a year then, but this last amount of time I have with my great grandmother, spend it with her, help her, be there at home. So I came home back to Lancaster from Temple University. And from there, at some point, I started going to city council meetings. I actually think I started going to city council meetings when she was still alive because I told her I was going to run for city council.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, my great grandmother had passed away. And soon after she passed away was a very important conversation in my community. So we have a convention center. The startings of the convention center were somewhat controversial because they reused the facade of a historic building, the Watt and Shan building. It was a commercial space historic to Lancaster City, Pennsylvania, downtown. Then the suburbanization happened, so the store kind of collapsed. Now we have Park City Mall out here. But it was redeveloped into a convention center in '08 by the Marriott the Marriott built a hotel and there is a convention center authority. Well, in 2016, they were negotiating an expansion. There were 3 city redevelopment authority owned properties adjacent. These were eyed by the Marriott for development. And instead of the city doing the straightforward thing and saying, hey, buy the properties, and then you can go through the LRTA program. The LRTA program is a tax abatement program where you pay 0% property tax, then 15, then 30, then 45, 60, 75, 90, and then 100%. So 7-year cycle. Instead, the city decided, hey, we like what you're putting down. You will give us a share of profits if we just expand your payment in lieu of tax agreement for the initial proposal.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, increase it 3% a year, get profits. Yeah, we'll forgive you on the property taxes. You don't have to pay those at all. You don't have to pay those at all. Okay? That's part of the crazy part because the city literally gambled with millions of public dollars. And the night they decided on it, there was flickering projectors that you could barely read the screen of what was going on. I still remember Tim Stuhldreher, the reporter, taking a photo with his camera so that he could read it from the chair because we weren't able to absorb these massive graphs quickly, massive graphs and tables. And then all of a sudden, the power goes out. What does my city council do? Keep on moving forward, of course, because they already knew what they were going to do. They had already decided what was going to be the fate of this deal. And now we're 10 years later. And I can tell you that we haven't gotten any money from the profit sharing. So not only did we lose out on like the LRTA taxes, but we're still losing out on property taxes because they would be paying 100% now.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not getting any profit sharing from anything. So this event, what ended up inspiring me to get involved, because of the blackout and the recording of the audio was destroyed, so you couldn't go back and listen to it. I got motivated. I was traumatized by this event. I confronted then counselor Deneen Sirachi at Lancaster Stands Up first meeting because I said that we need to live stream government meetings. We need accessibility and transparency in our government meetings. The public deserves to know at least what happened in the room.
Mm-hmm.
She took me out into the hall and she said, well, we're not going to do that. And I looked at her and said, well, then I'm going to do it. 20-year-old Tony Dastra just says, I'm going to start live broadcasting these government meetings. So I took an iPhone, a tripod, and my butt down the city hall starting February 14th, Valentine's Day, 2017. Started live broadcasting these meetings, and then a month later said I'm running for mayor.
Mm-hmm.
So I was throwing down. I was like, the whole system, this was just after the 2016 election. So I'm frustrated. I'm a young person in my first presidential election and apparently one of the craziest we've ever had. And my mayor is telling me, or my candidate for mayor is telling me that they're not going to be transparent, essentially. I did a whole proof of concept with a phone and a tripod. It's cheap, affordable, easy to do. And why I think this connects to today in the data center issue is because, one, transparency is a massive problem. Now they just don't have the conversations in the room. They all daisy chain opinion around the circle in private, so they don't break sunshine law, and technically don't break sunshine law, but they all communicate in a ring. But also, when I go to other communities, the one thing I see people doing every single time is recording and live broadcasting their meetings because they want their friends, family, community members to know what is going on. So I feel like I'm seeing not just my own community understand the level of distrust I've had for a decade,
Mm-hmm.
but now I'm seeing the whole state in their local municipalities go, hey, wait a minute. I voted for you. I'm telling you, I'm really freaked out by this. I want it to stop. And you won't act?
Mm-hmm.
You just giving me bread and circuses and theater over here? Like, no, I'm not down with it. So I got a lot of my data center material, like the stuff I go around campaigning with visibly. A lot of that came from Mifflin County, very rural, very Republican area. And Republicans and Democrats understand they're being sold out. Republicans aren't being fooled by Stacey Garrity's position that, oh, she just wants a pause. She's being supported by people accepting tech money and refusing to regulate the industry. So what do you think's going to happen as soon as she's governor? It's a whole sellout game, and I'm glad that some Republicans are aware that I'm clearly the best candidate for the job, and I'm glad to have their support. So that's like what got me involved. That's how it connects to today. And the reason why I'm running for governor is because we just needed someone to stand up on this issue because if Josh Shapiro wasn't going to do it, Casey Garrity wasn't going to do it, didn't see anybody else doing it. I'm the only candidate right now in this governor's race who's saying no, we got to ban these data centers.
Yeah, and who knows what
Like
the
if you
Libertarian will? I don't know. I actually don't even know what the LP stance is on data centers, but I can't assume it's a very good take.
I don't either. Funny enough, I did get an email today from the Libertarian candidate, so there might be some communication to happen there. But we'll see. We'll see. Maybe they'll take an anti-data center stance. I'd love to see that. Unfortunately, we as Pennsylvanians feel a little bit scared, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it is crazy that it seems easier for me to appeal to Republicans right now than Democrats
Mm-hmm.
because people, oh, Green Party is just like the super Democrats or something like whatever nonsense they want to say about us. No, I mean there are values that correlate, but I grew up pretty conservative. I don't feel like it's a sub-democratic party.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we in Pennsylvania just voted in our platform. We don't want open primaries. Like we don't want to participate in this system at all. The reason I became green was because I was an independent before. I ran all of my campaigns until last year as either unaffiliated, independent, or a third party that I tried starting my own called the Gold Goose Party. I just came to realize that it's hard to get people to wrap their head around that idea of starting
Mm-hmm.
something new.
Yeah.
So I went out and was like, okay, when I was younger, I looked at the libertarians and I don't think I agree with what's going on over there, especially post the Trump presidency, that the Libertarian Party, in my opinion, started spinning out.
Yeah.
I looked around and I approached Working Families Party and the Green Party. The reason I chose the Green Party is because they were more responsive and got to me quicker. So
I also think the
I
Working
registered.
Families Party is also only New York, right? I think it's New York only.
No,
Okay, that's
they
news to
they
me.
have they have two counselors in Philadelphia.
Okay, that's news to me. I thought they were. I thought it was like the Peace and Freedom, where it's a state-only party. But okay, it's good to know.
Nope, nope. Working Families Party is doing the best they can out there. I just decided Green Party was going to be the way because of the accessibility, and it felt very in line with my values. The one thing that gets a little weird to talk about because, like I said, I didn't do good in microeconomics, and it was the worst course I ever did in college. I think I got a C plus or something. I have always avoided like I don't think of myself as like a capitalist or a socialist or whatever other like those are the two main buzzwords we hear right now,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm like, is the shit working ist? Are we housed ist? Are we eating ist? Are we taking care of each other? Because as long as we're doing that, I don't care what illusion you want to do with the fake money.
Yeah, because
Like
the
what I
economy's not even
care
real
about,
in the first place. You know, it's not real.
the economy's not real. I was saying to somebody the other night, like, I, it's not that I don't understand economics. It's that I think economics is like a science made up by the rich and powerful, just used as a tool of illusion to try and understand what's going on. But like economic theories say that we're all rational actors. And if that were true, we wouldn't have bubbles like the AI bubble.
Oh, I know. No, is I'm actually an economics minor, and when I study it, I am studying it from a like judgy perspective. Like, okay, I understand what this theory is, but I don't agree with like anything that's going on. And you mentioned micro, and I've had experience in micro and macro and poverty economics, and it's like when you view it economics through like an anti-capitalist lens, it's like, dude, what is this? Like, I know what this graph means, I know what this represents, but these things that you talk about aren't realistic. Maybe in the 1700s they were, but that's not what we deal with today. But oh no, it's fake money. It's fake money. Economy doesn't exist. A moot point.
I mean, yeah, look, I think there's some level that we as humans have always understood transaction. Like
Mm-hmm.
precious metals have always been valuable to nations. But historically, things like salt have also been traded as currency because
Mm-hmm.
we understand there's intrinsic value in these tools for our society. I guess those precious metals have more application now with chips and computers and whatnot, but that they were untarnishable materials that kind of held. So they were looked at as stores of value that, look, we all like wearing shiny things. I should have put my rings on. I forgot to. Um, but let's actually circle back a little bit because you mentioned the that it would be cool for people to frown on taking the tech money like APAC and big oil. Let's talk about the big oil for a second. Let's
Hit
talk
me.
about resources and utilities.
Hit me.
So I said we, the people of Pennsylvania, are the owners of the resources, right?
Yeah.
So why is it that we allow private corporations to generate electricity with our resources and then sell it back to us at a higher rate so that they can profit, the CEOs can profit? We're stuck paying these higher rates. We're facing this AI tech bubble. Oh, they're threatening to make data centers utilities. There's a section of the Pennsylvania State Constitution on private corporations. I believe it's Article 10. Why not just make it illegal for private corporations to own utilities at all?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like that reaffirms our right under Article 1, Section 27, that it's our resources. We need it to live. I'm not saying if we're going to live in this dynamic of, like, bill, if we're going to continue the dynamic of paying bills for stuff, which I think makes sense in the way we know the world right now, at least it won't be 4 times as expensive.
Mm-hmm.
At least we won't be gouged. And furthermore, we can hold our governments more accountable when the system starts to fail. Like, and I'm talking about like the electrical system, the gas system,
Yeah.
the oil system. Pennsylvania did some of the first oil wells in the country. Pennzoil was a Pennsylvania thing. Pennzoil.
Yeah. Yeah.
McKean County, they currently still have issues with the oil wells going uncapped up there. But to tie some of this together, the United States doesn't produce a lot of oil.
Mm-hmm.
The corporations of the United States produce a massive amount of oil. I think we're one of the highest oil producing countries in the world. But the people don't own it. The governments don't own it. Whereas, like Brazil, Petrobras, they own the company. The United Kingdom, BP, British Petroleum. It is a public company, not a private corporation. So that is what I think Pennsylvania needs to start doing in the because, like, as much as I understand the climate crisis, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've been. It's funny I'm only green now because I've definitely been a green in my heart since being a child. I still remember Hank Green's Eco Geek project way back when. But I think that Pennsylvania can lead the way in the face of this massive extraction. This isn't about, these policies aren't inherently about, like, oh, protecting the environment. It's like, guys, whether you're conservative, liberal, leftist, neocon, whatever, like, we don't like getting screwed over by people. So why are we letting them screw us? And by a natural consequence, we make our environment a better thing in the
Mm-hmm.
process. So I've always tried to advocate for these policies, not from like a moral standpoint. Like, the thing most Pennsylvanians and Americans care about is, do I have enough money to pay the bills, get food, pay for healthcare? Let's focus on what makes sense financially, and generally, those things are also going to be good for our environment as well.
Absolutely. And the problem with that, then, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because really, that is what most people want. But then people are so misguided on what that is. That's why people voted in droves for Donald Trump because they're like, oh, he's going to bring my grocery prices down. And I know there's that
Hey,
desperation of like, hey, we can't afford things. We need to be able to live. But you're misguided at the wrong things. It's not, no matter who you vote for, Republican or Democrat, it's not like they're going to bring your prices down. They are the problems themselves. It's not because of Joe Biden you couldn't afford groceries. It's because the system sucks. That's the one thing that I just wish people would realize. And, all these people got swindled into voting for Trump in 2024 because, and it's a very legitimate concern. I don't like to pay $3,000 a basket for groceries. No one does. But people just
Yeah.
refuse to accept that it's the two-party system and it's capitalism itself that is causing these issues. And instead of, I feel like people, when you hear people, liberals, conservatives, whoever, talk about the issues in society, not the cultural war issues, like the things that actually matter, affordability, housing, healthcare, things like that, a lot of them end up accidentally having a like super anti-establishment take without realizing it. There's a really popular meme that it's like this guy in a MAGA hat and it says, "I hate everything about capitalism but call it communism because I don't know what either of them two are." And with how words and definitions have been twisted in education growing up and things like that, and just in general the buzzwords and things, we don't understand. Us two obviously get it, but the general public doesn't understand why these issues are what they are. They just think the big man in charge, whoever that is the reason they can or cannot do this. And so many people, again, when you interview them and when you ask them, they really give a good answer. They're like, it's because of this. And it's like, yes, that's why. That's because of this. And what are you doing for that? Oh, I voted for Donald Trump. You're that close to getting it, You're that close to getting it, and they realize it.
Well, hold on, because I want to make sure that we don't beat up on Trump voters,
Yeah.
okay? Because like a lot of people, one of the people I was talking to in Mifflin County, for example, when we were having this like back and forth, I'm sure we have differences of values and other things. Like I'm sure that there are items brought up that we would disagree on, but they told me that they voted for Trump, and that was the first time they voted in their life. It People heard someone speaking in a way that they were like, "Whoa, you're telling me what I want to hear and you're saying you're going to get it done. I believe you because of how you're presenting this to me."
Yeah.
While voters do like select who's in charge, I think it's okay for us to admit when we voted for someone and they've sold us out, right?
Mhm.
Like Donald Trump has made people a lot of promises that I think in the second term, I do struggle with the idea that we can defend the positions happening right now. Like it's getting more unaffordable. Gas is skyrocketed. Groceries are up. Inflation's still going on. We were told that we're going to get a hold of this, but the reason I give all the voters grace is because they don't actually enact these policies. They're saying what they feel, and there's a massive basket of things. But now, as we go through this issue, it's like, hey, look, can we agree that we're not getting the cheaper gas that when I heard it too, it sounds good to me. I remember I had an oh shit moment in about October, maybe September of last year, because I was reading some stuff that was from like either the Trump campaign or just in the media about the Trump campaign. And I sat there to myself and I was like, oh man, he's saying things that I like.
Mhm.
Kamala's not going to win. Like she's going to get trashed because if me as a normal voter who I'd like to believe I'm pretty well educated and I I voted how I voted. I voted for Kamala Harris because I was interested in seeing not a return to what we voted out. I would have preferred. Long story short, I've never voted green in my life until I was a green. But we can't we can't beat each other up if we want to get out of this.
Mhm.
Like we have to punch up, not to the side. Um, but it is also okay to kind of hold to the side accountable, and that's what I'm experiencing in Lancaster. Is that Democratic voters, people who were voting Democrat because they're freaked out by the Trump administration, they don't want anything to do with the Republican Party, or furthermore, they're so centralized on it, they don't want anything that's not Democrat.
Mhm.
They're asking themselves like, why is my city council and mayor that I just elected not fighting for me on these data centers?
Yeah.
And it's like, guys, they weren't fighting before, they aren't fighting after. I got out there and tried to give you a real option.
Mhm.
I've been doing this for at that point almost a decade. So respectfully, you need to stop having blind trust in these officials. You
Yeah,
need to pack house. You need to
yeah,
come to the meetings. You need to make fun of them because we can't recall them.
exactly. And
Like,
and when when you brought that up, it's like, yeah, we were saying about Trump voters. I only use that example because it was the most recent election, but that's you brought up a good example for Democratic voters as well in Lancaster that you've seen. It's like they also don't understand that it's the establishment. It's not who you're putting in office because they keep just getting, you know, they keep getting hyped up and disappointed, disappointed, disappointed. It's the same thing with the Trump voters as well. And I think we had a little disconnect, but we finally circled back and figured out what we were talking about. But yeah, it's just that they know they're like, well, wait, I voted you in. This is what we're supposed to believe. But then the problem is that it just keeps repeating and repeating and repeating, and you don't get actual change for just trying the same thing. They say that insanity is trying the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, and that's what we see from both major parties. And no one is getting what they want. Well, I guess Republicans are getting the like, one trans person that can't play sports in the entire state of California. But like, other than that, no one else is getting what they want. But then we just keep feeding back in and in and in, and people just have to realize it's not going to change. And that's what brought me to the Greens as well. Just realizing that doing the same thing over and over again isn't going to change. And I think a big thing of that is codifying Roe with all the chances the Democrats had to codify Roe and never seeing it happen. People just keep thinking, oh, vote blue, vote blue, vote blue. We'll protect abortion. We'll do it this time. We'll do it this time. We'll do it this time. How long have they been? How long are they like going to keep this grift up of Roe? It's never going to happen.
all the Democrats into this country is the brakes, not the gas.
It's a great, great point. Never thought about it that way.
The Democratic Party, I understand the political parties have shifted from where they originally started. And to your point about words and definitions, these words, Republican and Democrat, don't even really mean anything anymore when they
Mm-hmm.
first did. So I and the Democratic Party is no longer the party that supports slavery.
Mm-hmm.
When you still support a system that puts people in massive student loan debt, you're just turning us all into debt slaves.
Yeah.
Like, and I voted for Joe Biden based off the promise that he was going to do at least a little something about my student loans, and then he did squat for me.
Yeah.
So when Joe Biden ran for the second term, I was like, I'm really stressed out about this because I don't know who I'm going to vote for because I can't trust either of these candidates. When they swapped in Kamala, I was like, all right. I was interviewed by my local news about how I felt about things, and I was really just saying, look, if you gotta give me something else. If you want my vote, you gotta give me something else, and they did. So even though it wasn't what I would have liked to see, I was like, all right, we'll go for it. But now I am much more aggressive and radical about how I view this thing
Mm-hmm.
we call the American government, because this year is important. Another motivation for running this year is that what happened 250 years ago, Brody?
Oh, I wonder what. Maybe this so amazing and beautiful and luxurious and bougie country just got established.
So we fought against the system of power that was holding the country, and yeah, maybe it was by rich and powerful people, sure, but the point is that people got together to oppose the government that was oppressing them,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
We need to take the heart today. If we're really going to celebrate 250 years of the American experiment, we need to experiment again. In fact, I'm going to advertise something because I don't know what state your viewers might be in. You ready for a little history lesson, Brody?
Hit me, Tony.
So, how many amendments are the Bill of Rights?
10.
Did you know that they were initially proposed as 12?
I feel like I've heard of that like here and there, but I don't know what the 12 were or what the other two were.
So you know what one of them is because it got ratified 200 some years later in 1992. It's the 27th
And
Amendment.
the 27th Amendment, that is, hold on. 27th Amendment. You said 92.
It deals with pay and compensation for elected officials.
Okay, I thought the last amendment was lowering the voting age to 18, but you have to educate me then.
I mean, You're in front of a computer. I shut mine down. I'm using my phone. You can Google it while and fact check me because I'm totally open to being fact
Let's
checked.
fact check them. Let's
Um,
go.
yeah, let's fact check me right now, and then I'll keep going with the story.
So we're looking at 27th Amendment.
27th Amendment.
27th Amendment, 1992, prohibits any law that changes the salaries of senators and representatives from taking effect until the next election of the House of Representatives has occurred. Proposed in 1789, got ratified 203 years later in 1992.
We should have seen history as the beginning of the end because our elected officials were doing more to protect themselves than they were doing to protect us, the public. So the first 10 amendments were ratified. The 11th of the 12 got ratified in 92. And actually, numbers 1 through 10 were 3 through 12. Number 27 was actually 2. And the last one, Article the First, is the Congressional Reapportionment Amendment. It was one of the few things George Washington was like, no, 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 this is something we really need. George Washington was advocating for a United States House that would always have the same proportion of representation to the people.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a little bit of debate about what the real ratio would be because that's why it failed was the back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
But let's just use the range of 30 to 50,000 people to every representative.
Mm-hmm.
The lowest ratio we have right now is about one United States House rep to 550,000 people, and the highest is around 1,100,000.
Wow.
So think about how much more accessible your federal representation would be if you were one of 30,000 instead of one of 300 plus thousand, 600 plus thousand. But we capped our House and we refused to add more power into the House to represent the people because it also makes it easier for corporations to manipulate us when they have, what would it be, 535 targets instead of thousands.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good thought. Yeah.
So Pennsylvania has ratified this amendment. A lot of the original 13 colonies have. It could still be ratified if state legislatures across the country that are new, I say new like they're new, like basically not the original states,
Yeah.
ratify this. Let's go. We could radically reform our government. In fact, 250 years later, I say that's a good honoring of George Washington and the founding father if you want to get like all cute about it, you know? Like this was a foundational idea for George Washington. A lot of people prop George Washington up because of the never being part of a political party, setting precedents for the country about what good leadership looks like. Now, George Washington might have held slaves, but I'm not gonna go through this laborious effort of like beating down the legacies of the past when even Thomas Jefferson, who look, I'm not a huge fan of Thomas Jefferson anymore, but I gotta give him props that he understood that everything going on around him. If you go to Jefferson Memorial in Washington, D.C., there's one of the quotes that basically says, man, we got to give the people a government that's flexible and amendable because what if the way they look at us is as savages as the past?
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't wrong because homie enslaved his own children and never released them when he died. So that's crazy. Um, I don't want to just beat up these people though. I think they did bring something to the table. They've created a document that I would argue America has been a good example for other countries in terms of freedom and liberty until recently. Like we're living in Patriot Act America
Mm-hmm.
where our government's really trying to own us and control us. We like student loan debts are some of the debts you just can't get rid of through bankruptcy. And that says a lot about what the government thinks about us
Mm-hmm.
as people, as social security numbers.
Yeah. So that's
It's time for us to live up to these revolutionary values.
no. I like that way you put it for sure. I wish I had stuff to say add to that, but you pretty much took everything that I was feeling right out of my mouth. You offered a good perspective on that, and I guess just to continue on, just talking about like statewide and stuff. How do you, and I know you're fairly new in the grand scheme of things, Degreens. How do you take being. Are you 96 or 97?
96.
So that's Gen
Don't
Z.
give me this.
That's Gen
Yeah,
Z,
I
right?
am Gen Z.
That is.
Look,
I thought so. I thought
people,
so.
no. People argue with me about it because like, oh, well, this statistic says this statistic says that. You're a millennial, and I'm like, look, my bar is that I had a computer growing up my whole life. There are valid cultural metrics. Like, do you remember 9/11? I do remember 9/11. Like, I remember walking in the door and seeing a plane hit the tower when we got let out from school. But like, these aren't firm memories,
Hmm.
okay? So I feel like I am Gen Z.
Yeah, I would agree.
Generations are abstract.
I just wanted to ask how it feels like, running is for such a big position, governor of PA as a Gen Z candidate, as someone who might. What do you say to those who might say, "Oh, you don't know what you're doing. You're too young. You're just a kid. You're just Gen Z. How are you going to stand up to someone like, as much as I don't like Shapiro and Garrity, they both have a lot of experience that a lot of people see as valuable."
They have a lot of other things, and I don't want to discredit the experiences they have, like Josh Shapiro, attorney, local representative, county commissioner at one point, uh, Stacey Garrity, veteran, state treasurer. I might be young, but I have spent the last 10 years of my life drilled on local politics, municipal affairs. I've drafted a city charter. I've had to read the state law just to try and understand what I could and couldn't do straight up outright without worrying about case law in my community. The thing about Pennsylvania, to the point of fact I mentioned earlier, there's 2,559 municipalities. When you have a state legislature that can't get a budget passed on time for 5 years, Josh Shapiro has never passed a single on time budget. That means everything in Pennsylvania becomes municipal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm the most qualified candidate. Because even though like Josh has past experience in municipal government, he is far away from that experience now. I am hands-on in the ground, involved in municipal affairs. You can't find a more qualified candidate than me right now. I might be young, I might have a lot of energy and passion, but I trust people to be like my experts in the room. I find the best people, believe me, are the best people. Um, but like Trump jokes aside, like truly, and that's a reason why that resonates with people is because you have to acknowledge you don't know everything. You need to find people who are experts in fields and get their counsel and advice to create policy. But right now, what the people of Pennsylvania need is a constitutional convention for our state constitution.
Mm-hmm.
We need to use Article 1, Section 2 to reform or abolish this government and build a new one because it is not working. Politicians keep advocating for lower property taxes. Well, when the only tool our school districts have to balance their budgets is local property taxes, and you don't pass a budget for months, causing school districts to take out millions of dollars of loans because like 50% plus of their budget is dependent on state funding, well, a loan has a what? An interest rate. So when you force a local school districts are municipalities technically. When you force a municipality to take out a loan and their only tool to balance the budget is property taxes, what do you get? Tax increases. I know I've been saying shit. I'm trying not to drop too
No,
many other F words.
this is an uncensored podcast. You're good.
I, I know it's uncensored, but I'm trying to be like a decent person. Look, in private, I'm happy to let the sailor mouth fly, but I am allowed to say shit because Josh Shapiro says he's getting shit done, and all he's done is filled the diapers of several Democratic leaders. He make big poopy in the state, and we all can smell it. So we truly, though, we need to get a grip on our local governments, and we need to get a grip on our state legislature.
Absolutely.
But the legislature is going to take some time. So what we need to do is unshackle our municipalities. Will that mean some municipalities do stuff that I don't like? Probably, maybe, maybe we get into a situation where local governments are essentially decriminalizing or legalizing cannabis when the state won't, because even though it's an immensely popular policy in Pennsylvania, we just can't seem to get it over the finish line for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's like communities that have one way or the other that I don't like. But the point is that our communities will start moving forward instead of staying same spot circling the drain.
Absolutely. That's a great way to put it. I like that. Now, we've talked a lot about state politics and just kind of tearing things down and also data centers. What else do you see yourself as bringing to the table? As just new, green, young Gen Z guy running for governor? What are your other main things that you're bringing to the table?
Well, I'm just so handsome, man.
I've never seen you without a suit, so
That is intentional. So when you don't have a lot of money, you got to try and stick to branding. I don't have a lot of money myself, so I have a couple nice suits. I decided because I'm Green Party, I'll keep wearing the green suit. The hat is a local influence that the local people around here know me for the hat. This was like the original thing people knew me for in Lancaster
okay.
City. So that's my homage to how I've gotten into this game. I can only think of, I actually want to say one time, maybe two times in this entire cycle where I, as a candidate, have gone out and campaigned without the full suit.
Hey, it's branding. You gotta make
That's
yourself
all it is,
known.
branding.
Everyone knows the name Josh Shapiro, and why is that? Oh yeah, because he was seen, shaking hands. I don't know, was he shaking hands with Netanyahu or something? But people know Josh Shapiro because he does a lot of things that I don't agree with, and people know Stacey Garrity because Treasurer of Pennsylvania. So how do we make people know Tony Dastra? Oh, he's the guy with the fedora and the green suit. There you go. That's how you make yourself known.
Yeah, well, I mean, one, you have an image, but two, you got to stop acting like a normal politician. Like, our political figures, I feel the reason they're so weak is because post Civil War, our country kind of restructured. Okay, our states were a lot more free as individual states prior to the Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
As a result of it, we're like, hey, can't let that happen again. Better really crack down and make sure the federal government is in control of everything, or at least in charge, so that there's a way to mitigate this situation going
Mm-hmm.
forward. Unfortunately, that created like where someone who might be my age and doing the things I'm doing, a local, let's say, young Democrat who wants to run for office, I'll actually use my mayor as an example. Uh, I've started calling him Alcaldito Arroyo, which means Little Mayor Arroyo because he is small of ideas and will
Mm-hmm.
and spine. Very, very weak person, in my opinion. But he is following the example Josh Shapiro sets of avoiding upset public, controlling the conversation. It is a structure of where healthcare companies deny, depose, delay, our government officials confuse, confound, and control. That is a recipe for disaster, and we're experiencing how weak our local officials are and how little they actually understand about civics and civic society
Mm-hmm.
when they can't confront the data center developers.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's a really great point. Never again. I don't. I also am not thinking the same way you are necessarily. I'm not thinking about. I don't have the mindset of someone who's a political candidate. So I think what you bring to this podcast and to the viewers and to just me to be more educated is really solid. Another thing I really like to ask for the candidates that I interview is what are your thoughts slash response to someone who says I want to vote for you, but I can't let Stacey Garrity win or I can't let X Republican win. What is your message? What are your thoughts around something about like the Greens are just there to steal votes? What do you think about something like that?
It doesn't matter if Josh Shapiro or Stacey Garrity wins because our legislature is too dysfunctional to get anything done. And furthermore, even if Josh Shapiro manages to get a whole trifecta, the trifecta is fragile because you can't go out there and promise people an agenda saying something like, let's just use this specific point. One of the motivators for me to be very much in line with the LGBTQ plus community and protecting their rights. You cannot go out and say we're going to have this pro LGBTQ plus agenda, but then endorse senators like James Malone,
Mm-hmm.
who voted with Republicans on Title IX legislation.
Yeah.
Now, I don't I don't know that it's venue and forum to get into the nuances of those conversations. I like to recognize that we as people have discomforts. Like I said, I grew up very conservative. I myself, if I knew what this was when I was younger, I probably would have been diagnosed with gender dysphoria. It's a very real lived experience for me that being a Christian and having these feelings, like, to confront in real time. Um, so I wanna create these forums for people to talk about these issues without it being visceral anger and beating down on like one kid in a school, because that's part of something that people don't always understand when they're upset about it. Is it they might be doing a policy literally for like one
That's
child.
what I mentioned earlier today.
Um,
Is literally that they'll be passing these restrictions, and it's for one kid in the entire state. I think there was a sports ban or something in Utah or something like that, and I think it quite literally affected one kid in the entire state. And you're telling me we're struggling to afford things. Our government is currently, and this is like a year and a half, 2 years ago. Our government is complacent in one of the most widely broadcasted, the most widely broadcasted genocide of all time, and that is your priority, to waste money, to waste time, and to waste just the people's time and the people's money on targeting one person so you could further your edgelord right wing agenda. Like that's just the way that I see it.
I mean, but look, there's arguments people have that when they don't think about the way the system's screwing them, I understand why they feel the way they feel. Because let's look at a very earnest argument someone might have, whether we agree with it, you and I, or not. Someone might say, oh, well, I don't want this child who's transitioning to participate in X sport because they will have Y advantage and my kid's trying to get a scholarship. I don't want my kid to lose out on their scholarship because we allowed someone with an advantage into the sport. Because I think most people are reasonable enough to understand all of our biologies are different. We all have certain advantages and disadvantages, and there's
Yeah.
bell curves and
And sports
statistics
is
to all
not a
that.
level playing field. Let's just get out of the way. It's not a level playing field whatsoever.
Sports is not a level playing field, but also when we have a state constitution that is supposed to guarantee public education and fund it in an effective manner, why are our kids still competing for sports scholarships and they
Exactly.
can't just do it for the love of the game?
Exactly. Not everything has to have some sort of financial motivator or something. If how it should be, in a perfect world, no one's competing for scholarships. We're all getting that higher education paid for by the state, supported by the state, and we're able to achieve this without going into massive student debt. Instead, you have this culture, and I know this isn't super relevant to politics, but as someone who grew up playing sports and all throughout high school, there was just such a toxic culture amongst parents thinking that their kid has to be the absolute best star in the world, they need to pay for all this training, all this whatever, all this anything, and that if they're not, and you see it more amongst like soccer and football, the bigger teams, bigger rosters, that if they're not doing exactly what they're doing, they're not at 100% of their all time. If they don't devote their entire life to it, then they're seen as a failure, and that just is a trickle down from the fact that we don't have free higher education. We're not guaranteed that as a right to in order to advance our career and to be able to actually support ourselves financially. So if you really think about it, the whole you're mad because you see a soccer mom yelling at a referee with her 7-year-old son or whatever because she's mad about something. That's a trickle down from the system, whether you think about that or not.
It is. That's right. That is just, but it's understandable, I think, is what I'm trying to say. And that's why what I really bring to the table that I feel is different than maybe all other candidates who are running for office in the country is that I'm willing to get in uncomfortable conversations. I'm willing to be around people I know we do not share values, and like try to figure out where there is common ground, because this government is a social contract,
Hmm.
and it depends on all of us having some level of core agreement about what's going on if we're going to have a functional one. So even though I very much support all of my community, the LGBTQ plus community, I don't want to just go out there and scare the hell out of people and beat them down with the gay agenda. Like, I want people to try and go through the level of building understanding. Like, because when you just force people to do stuff, you get a really quick backlash as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we observed with the way politics has operated over the last 20, 30 years at least,
Mm-hmm.
because the LGBTQ plus community was totally outcast and then used as the bartering chip. And now the Democratic Party, they'll say they support you, but also actively push you away depending on what the local community looks like.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's not a reliable system to be putting your votes into. That's your, to invest in.
Yes.
Like, I want to know how this market's going to use my money or use my social political capital.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I just can't support the Democrats anymore. I, I've actually supported, not a massive amount because I'm in a hugely Democratic area, but I've supported Republican candidates. Like, there was a guy running for my House district, Eric Beazer. He basically tried to be a one issue candidate, which was about cannabis legislation. And I'm like, I mean, honestly, dude, your policies are really smart on this stuff. You're in the business. You have either a hemp or a cannabis store. You might still do that. And yeah, if you can get these policies across the finish line, I will gladly support you. I had a sign out of my yard for them. I voted for them, which I know is like a huge black mark in some people's eyes. But the cannabis issue is one that deeply affects marginalized communities.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a pretty decent single issue when you're a state like Pennsylvania and you're so dysfunctional, because it would have provided funding, it would have provided equity, it would have provided some sort of ecological relief, even because new industries are being created, new ways of having materials to utilize in the state. Hempfield in Lancaster literally used to be hemp fields. That's why it's called
Yeah.
Hempfield.
Yeah.
So I, if a politician is willing to work to get my vote, I will genuinely consider them. I don't like looking at the massive marketing, and that's like true to where I take it with one-on-one with people too. Like, I can have a single exchange with you, and I do my best to let those single exchanges, just like, these are just single points in time.
Mm-hmm.
We are ever growing, ever changing people. Who you are and what you believe today might not be what you believe tomorrow. And we have to be open to change, because if we keep looking at people like ideologues as pillars of this thing and they're unmovable,
Mm-hmm.
then yeah, we never get change until people die. And I would like to see people who are alive currently see a new America, see the sun rise again on our nation like it did 250 years ago. There's a chair. That's reference. There's a chair that George Washington sat on in the congressional Jesus. The initial body that formed. I'm just gonna skip the words. The initial body that started forming the
Yeah.
country.
Yeah. Yeah.
He had a chair with a half sun on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say it's reference to like James Madison asked Ben Franklin if the sun was rising or setting.
Mm-hmm.
And Ben Franklin said, it's rising. But you can't have a rising sun forever. At some point, the sun hits noon,
Mm-hmm.
then it starts getting twilight. Okay for us as a people to recognize that maybe it's nighttime.
Mm-hmm.
Time to work for third shift, everybody. Like, wake up, get to work. Because if you're still believing in the American dream that we were all sold, maybe you're asleep still.
That was the thing I was
'Cause
gonna
I've
bring up,
wait.
is that's my other like qualm of like the two-party system, is that a lot of people from both parties will give you a visceral reaction if you dare to criticize America. They say like, "Oh, it's beautiful. It's the best country in the world. It's perfect. How dare you criticize this?" It's like they how do I say this? They they will just be against you if you say, "Oh, are they?" Or you know what they like to say? They like to say, "If you don't like it, get out." Well, how about we fix what's in here so we don't have to complain? That's just a thought of mine, you know? People will be like, "Oh, you don't like America, get out. You don't like what's wrong. How about you just leave the country?" How about we fix what's wrong? Because you saying just get out, is just an excuse as to why we can't progress and why we can't actually change what needs to be changed. It's just a lack of people being lazy to not want change. They just use it as an out instead of actually improving what we can in this country for the better.
Look, you are going to a restaurant, okay, or let's say you own a restaurant, and a famous food critic comes in, gives you a critique, gives you a terrible review, and then another one does, and then another one does, and maybe some come in and they love it. Maybe there's some good ones.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what kind of business owner are you if you don't take those negative critiques and really try to understand them? Like, we all know that some criticisms come from a place of bad faith, but we also know some criticisms come from a place of good faith. And it can be hard to discern between the two, which is why I think our natural inclination as people is to be defensive when we get criticized. But look, I'm not a perfect candidate. I'm a 30-year-old. I am the youngest person to ever run for governor. I'm open to criticisms of my character, but at the end of the day, somebody needed to jump in who was really going to advocate for the people of Pennsylvania. Like, because we said America first, we said Pennsylvania first.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Pennsylvania first. Because if the nation's falling apart, then I am going to prioritize the state. I am going to be putting Pennsylvania first, not Pennsylvania corporations, the people of Pennsylvania. Because whereas our Constitution of the state gives us liberties, it also controls corporations.
Mm-hmm.
And we can build on that so we taken advantage of. I'm not necessarily trying to throw the whole thing out. I've mentioned multiple points here throughout our Constitution that I support, but there's some pretty big ones that we need to address. This could be a convention like it was in the 60s, where it wasn't like a full-blown convention like it was in, I think it was 1874, but it's a series of amendments over time
Mm-hmm.
that together make that convention. So I want to be able to recall my elected officials when I can't trust them to be the public trust, not just when they do a crime. Like, if you're really blowing it, I should be able to say, hey, take this petition around. If we get enough signatures, there's a recall election and they got to go or stay, whatever. We should be able to have more local control. Like, if we can't figure out something in the state legislature, we need to have our local municipalities the power to address it.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to our state legislature, I'm also open to I'm not firm on this one, but our Senate federally, like our federal Senate is designed to represent these states as individuals, right? It doesn't matter the size or shape or population.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is that everyone at the table in the Senate is equal. That's not the way our Pennsylvania Senate works, though. Like, if you told me, hey, we're going to redo the Pennsylvania Senate, instead of it being 50 equal population districts, it's going to be one senator for every county. I might not like that idea, but I would at least concede it's more in line with the dynamic of our federal Constitution. Mm-hmm. What I'd much rather prefer is more in line with what I was saying with our representation. Like, I want one house where we have a built-in ratio. So as populations grow and shift, the same ratio of representation exists, because it's really hard to gerrymander when the representation proportions are lower.
Yeah.
The fact that our system is so small, yet the ratio so large, is what makes gerrymandering possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we need massive reforms. Like, I guess, even though I have policies that I will advocate for, like cannabis legalization, like making sure that our Second Amendment rights are protected, I also have, more importantly, the systemic issues we need to address so that we can have these more earnest and honest conversations focused on that topic. Not, hey, if you like this and that, you also have to vote for all these things. Or if you like this and that, you got to vote for all those things. Here's a red version and a blue version. You got to pick one because that's the way the system works. No, we need single runoff voting so you can go, or ranked choice voting, I mean, so you can say 1, 2, 3. We need to be able to read. I do like the fact that our municipal elections only occur in the off years. I do kind of like that. But the recall elections will need to create some level of exemption for that so we don't have power gaps.
Mm-hmm.
and maybe like the about all this, like what I think makes me a uniquely different candidate from all the candidates that have potentially stood before the state ever is that like we had our founding fathers 250 years ago. Well, if I'm trying to bring a new day about for the state and the country, call me your adoptive daddy.
Yeah, you've definitely put on a really good show of just who you are. You know what would you bring to the table, and I think a lot of people resonate, whether they know about whether they know it or not. What you know they probably resonate with you, and that's how I feel like a lot of people are with Greens, and more like left leaning people is that you give them a candidate that has all these things, and they're like, great, that sounds good to me, and you see the little G next to their name, and they're like, I'm not gonna vote for that. I'm not gonna touch that. Something I don't quite
Yeah.
understand, but I just think it's interesting that you give, let's say Josh Shapiro just had the exact same policies you had, people would be in line to vote for him because he's Josh Shapiro. But the second we see a G or even an L, I mean, in 2024, I voted for a couple libertarians in statewide just because I welcome to the show.
She likes attention.
I'm glad. She's our first animal guest onto the show, so that's pretty awesome.
Oh, congratulations, Bria.
But like
Sorry to derail your train there, but you're right. Like people are looking at these bundle packages as opposed to who they're voting for. They're looking at
mm,
that party.
and it's like you mentioned the whole like supporting the Republicans locally, and it's like, yes, I look at the Libertarians nationally, and I'm like, I can't stand what these people are thinking. But then the Libertarians locally, the few that I voted for in 2024, it's like what they bring to the table is something that I can get on board with. It was also in all the seats that didn't have any Green candidates. It was either them or like a forward or a keystone, whatever a keystone is. But no, I think that's a big thing. Is just instead of bundling something all in one, it's like here's what I bring, here's this, and I think the whole thing we're talking about with Greens and Libertarians and third parties and talking about the two-party system is it's a circular argument. I won't vote for X candidate because X candidate can't win. It's a circular argument because
Yeah,
X candidate can't win because you aren't voting for them.
you don't vote for them.
Exactly.
Oh goodness, my cat is really excited. I do apologize. We were doing so good, and I guess she just wanted some attention. And uh, it sucks for me because I only have a few good suits. I have a policy that I try not to have my pets like
Mhm.
get up on me like this because it is such a hassle to get all the fur out of the nice
Oh, I
clothes.
bet.
But for her, I will do it because if it keeps her being a girl, we'll do it. Um, yeah, man, it's weird. Like people have said that when they first hear me, they think I'm a Trump supporter. And I think that speaks volumes to like one, the level of initial bias people have and how problematic that can be
Mhm.
because you're turning off to an you don't know that yet that you agree with. But also like two, I'm kind of a unique kind of candidate in that sense. Like Trump came out and said the things that people like, and then right now in the second term, especially, he is not delivering.
Mhm.
Like, would I say no if he waved the magic wand that I know the federal government has to get rid of some of our student loans? I would not say no to that. Wouldn't change my feelings about him because I've lost the trust, but I'd be like, in your second, go for it. Like,
Mhm.
I'll at least give you the credit for getting that done. Might even help him in the popularity polls, to be honest with you. Um, but I try not to say stuff that I can't deliver on, which is why I'm very clear through a lot of this that I'm advocating for positions. I'm only going to be the governor of the state.
Mhm.
I am not going to be the legislature. I can't just make new laws and have the legislature pass them. What I can do is use the office for the 4 years that I would have it and advocate, push, and maybe even chair over the constitutional convention that we need to have.
Mhm.
And then we'll have to figure out what those thresholds look like. Like, what are we up to changing? Are we going to do it piece by piece? Look at there's a whole process to it that you make up every time because it's not constitutionally dictated.
Mhm.
I know that we need to have more conversations in this country. And if we actually want to have leadership that represents us, we need to be like directly connected to that representation. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to be that like normal person running for governor.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't get it twisted. I know I got some special talents and skills, and I'm just so handsome and whatnot. But like, it, I'm a normal person.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have anyone back me. I've sacrificed my own resources to do all this stuff. We're doing our best to fundraise. So if you're still watching, please go to dasherpa.org, find the donation link, and donate. Um, there's a plug. I'm bad at fundraising, but and I'm bad at fundraising because I want to get the work done. I don't want to talk to these people about like oh, you're gonna give me millions of dollars if I policy. Like that is what elected officials in Washington have to do. Talk to
Mm-hmm.
lobbyists, get the lobbying money. No,
Yeah.
tap it.
Yeah.
People, of the people, by the people, for the people. And if those sort of words, saying the way I talk makes people think that I'm a Trump supporter, maybe people really need to evaluate their own bias. And instead of thinking that they're so open minded, like maybe they need to have some internal reflection there. Cause I am speaking directly to Democrats when I say that.
Mm-hmm.
Like it has become easier for me to pursue a Republican to give me their vote right now than a Democrat because they're so scared of Trump.
Yeah.
Stop. The problem isn't that he has this inflection or he has this way of saying things people want to hear. The problem is that he doesn't deliver on that. The problem is that he commits these egregious offenses and takes no accountability for them. If a politician would just take accountability for their mistakes, I'd love that. And that's why people like, I have zero doubt if I become successful in these polls after I get ballot access and I start having a good showing in the state, yeah, the media organizations are going to start talking trash and talking all this BS, and I'm probably going to have a heck of a time. But I don't care because if that happens, it means I know we're successful, and I'm hoping that the people can at least. I know it's hard to say as an elected or as a candidate for an elected office, but like at least trust that as drama ensues, the drama is a good sign that you're supporting someone who's actually working on your side, even if they have their own problems or issues you don't agree with.
Mm-hmm. And I think the whole thing you brought up about the people think you're a Trump supporter. Three main things. One, two words, median voter. Number two, um, people see the green and they think Russia, Russia, Russia. Two. Three, they like what you have to say, but then they see the green and think, oh, Russia, Russia, Russia. That's the problem. Is that I find it really difficult to try to speak to liberals and progressives because they just there's so much like hatred for the Green Party that I've seen. Either online or in my personal life. I'm not going to get into too
Well, it's
specific
manufactured.
examples, but what's that?
It's manufactured.
Yeah, it's all manufactured because you're telling me that the Greens are the reason that Trump has won twice. No, and not even that. But there's the whole, the whole 2016 Russia thing and everything. But just there's been a lot of propaganda by the DNC put out to try to vilify this actual progressive left-wing eco-socialist party as a Chinese invasion or a Russian invasion or a whatever invasion, and a lot of people, it still stems from Cold War, like propaganda. Like obviously Russia's not the USSR anymore, but people think, ooh, Russia, communist, scary. Ooh, China, socialist, scary, and it perpetuates that fear that we have from propaganda that is 70 years old, but it still resonates in our system today. You're taught growing up that China and Russia are the most evil criminal organizations on earth, and then you have a major political party saying, oh, this political party is affiliated with these countries that are the most evil and criminal organizations on earth. Of course, they're going to have a bad feeling about it. And we go back to the whole median voter thing and talking about how misdirected that the Democratic voters and the Trump voters were. But a lot of these people are also misdirected when they're confronted with a third party, and especially a Green, from all of this just systematic education, systematic propaganda that's put out there. And something that you as a candidate have to deal with. Unfortunately, is just running in that party.
I'm very honored that the Green Party endorsed me for this race because one, very unexpected candidate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Two, we had to kind of react in real time about some of these issues. So there wasn't a massive amount of preparation.
Mm-hmm.
But three, it's an indicator of trust and hope that like I've been forward with many Greens. One of the biggest things that made me uncomfortable about joining the party was like actually the eco-socialist stuff because like I said earlier, I don't think in these terms.
Mm-hmm.
So it felt weird for me to be a part of a platform that stands with that terminology in it. But I know that my being resonates with those values,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And I think what I'm really good at doing, trying to translate between two different perspectives, like, hey, you like this, you like that. They're describing it this way, but do you like this and that? Okay, well, here's this. I was thinking about this today. It kind of blows me away that we think of our country as capitalist when all of us get taxes taken from us. Like it's not a purely capitalist
No,
country at
it's not.
all. Like we all I, I don't know if I'm correct in saying this, but like when I think about it in that way, we're already socialist. Like and the problem that we're experiencing is because America, where they really were in line with those values in the basically from the New Deal to the 70s, and I would say more when Reagan came in, like we were taxing the highest income earners 90% at one point in
Mm-hmm.
time. And I understand how you hear that it makes someone go like, I don't like that. I don't like the sound of that. Well, I mean, because we also intrinsically know, like, we're in the second Gilded Age right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we did that because we were in the first Gilded Age of America. And we were able to find a reasonable way out that supported the country and had our greatest era of prosperity for the middle class.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I'm not suggesting anything new. In fact, argue it's conservative to go back to those values. That's why sometimes I say like I'm a conservative green because like it, these words are jump rope.
Mm-hmm.
Like conservative is a buzzword, liberal's a buzzword, Republican, Democrat, even libertarian is like a buzzword. So eh, I just try to speak my mind and have these honest conversations. And if I say something that turns into a soundbite, great. I'm not well known right now, so every bit of attention you give me, yay.
For the like 16 people that are ever gonna see this, yeah.
Hey, you never know. Maybe someone's gonna like that adopting daddy line, and I'm gonna be a meme.
There you go. We're gonna turn on Twitter in 2 weeks, and it's just gonna be governor candidate for Pennsylvania, whatever you said. Yeah. Just,
Daddy.
well, that's
I'm a little goofy.
oh yeah, but I think that's awesome. I think that's a great way to bring it to the table instead of a guy who speaks monotone. Yeah, I love Israel. I hate when people succeed, and then monotone.
I'm 30. If I can't enjoy my life, so try to advocate for my community, then I don't want to be doing this. Like I'm genuinely trying to be a normal person
Mm-hmm.
and not beat myself up too much as I have done in the past. It's like, look, people across the state are going to see me for the first time and have an opinion, and I hear those opinions. Maybe they'll change my behaviors, maybe they won't. But I'm not going to preemptively assume what the people need from me when
Mm-hmm.
I haven't heard from them.
Mm-hmm.
So if the people need me to be a better person in XYZ regard, then let's talk about that and let's do that because that's how we actually set the bar higher for more people in the future because then those children who might have the idea like maybe someday I'll represent my community, they will in advance be more mindful of the choices they make growing up and it, opportunity cost. Everything has a cost and some of my shenanigans are what make me grounded and connected to the real public perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Because if like I was trying to be a perfect politician from day one, then I wouldn't be in touch with what normal people are saying.
Absolutely. That's something else that you bring to the table that I feel like a lot of people aren't super aware of. But hey, hopefully that the more you're getting yourself out there, sort of see those numbers jump up.
Oh, I'm feeling that these numbers are going to start jumping. I genuinely believe it's possible. When I started this campaign, I was like, snowball's chance in hell. It's a non-zero. Whenever you run for office and get on a ballot, it's a non-zero probability you could win, even though we know parties are long shots. But with the discourse going on in the state, the kindness I've experienced in some of the most rural parts of the state, like Tioga, Mifflin, Monroe, like I think it's possible that one, I could perform better than Stacey Garrity because Republicans know that she's a sellout
Yeah.
and a shill.
And also, just this year being 2026 alone, Republicans are just not in a good place whatsoever. So that's another big factor.
Stacey is such a weak leader, and what the Republican Party in the state lacks is a strong leader,
Mm-hmm.
frankly. Like, and maybe that's why the Republican Party and the legislatures can be so chaotic, and we struggle with the budgets and stuff, is because people are vying to be that person, but they've handed it to Stacey because she's the highest elected official.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Whereas John Shapiro, honestly, very Trump-like in his regard of control. Like he controls the structure, and people down the ballot need to fall in line because
Mm-hmm.
if you don't, we're gonna check your reality.
Yeah.
If Republicans start going out there and saying, "I'm a Trump supporter and a Dastra supporter," I have a feeling Democrats are gonna maybe be a little nervous by that idea. But then, hey, if you start to see that Republicans are voting for Tony Dastra, the Democrats who are really scared but excited might go, all right, I guess we're united in one front for once. Let's
You bring up a
go.
good example,
And
actually.
so,
You
huh?
bring up that actually makes me think of a really good example. I don't know if you saw today. Abdul Al Saeed running for Senate in Michigan, one of the two frontrunners, him and Haley Stevens. He said earlier today, I can't remember the exact quote, but it was about he was talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene's supporters. Marjorie Taylor Greene has the most insane takes on everything, but has one good take, and it's her take on Israel. It's a very good take, and that's part of the reason why she resigned because she didn't like to see the selling out of the government. But anyways, he was just saying that his supporters, a lot of people are supporting him in the primaries because he's taken a very pro-Palestine, anti-genocide stance, while Haley Stevens, his opponent in the primary, is completely bought out by AIPAC. And he said,
Ah,
my supporters and Marjorie Taylor Greene's supporters, if we can get along on one thing and find that common ground on supporting Palestine against the Israeli genocide, then so be it. Let it be. And it's like,
yeah,
who cares that she's one of the most deranged people I've ever seen speak? If you can find her supporters and have that common ground, I'm not saying, he's not going up and embracing her. He's not going up and campaigning like her, like Kamala Harris did with the Cheneys. He is just merely saying, hey, if we can find that common ground across parties, let it happen. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
I don't either. And I'm happy to accept the embrace of Republicans in Pennsylvania. I don't look at anybody for their partisan affiliation. I look at them for their care for their communities, and that's one of the most beautiful things I've experienced through all this travel is that when you go to these data center meetings, you know that every single person in that room cares deeply about their community. Maybe it's a little self-serving because it's also their community,
Yeah.
their life, but they showed up together and they cared. And there's Democrats, Republicans, Greens, Libertarians, Independents, non-affiliated, all
Mm-hmm.
they're all there in the same room together. And that's the unifying issue in Pennsylvania is data centers. That's what's waking us up to how we're being sold out as a people
Mm-hmm.
and waking up to the show. Because look, I'll tell you what, you want to stop having property tax increases because of stalemated budgets, part of this constitutional convention needs to be a mechanism for the budgets get passed automatically, or at least the parts that impact local taxes get passed automatically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's the one thing too is data centers. Are there anyone besides like the the top the small percent of like just absolute bootlickers that actually want these things in our community? You think of it. You think of all our issues that are in this country today. Data centers are one of the ones that we can really get everyone on board with, unless you're the 1%, or you're the tech overlord, or you're in that really small percent who just bootlicks for some reason. But most people can get on board with that no data centers thing, and I think that that's something that I mentioned it so many times. That's something that's just not talked about, and it's not something a lot of people think about because they haven't been directly impacted. Give it a year, give it 2 years, wait till everyone's communities start being impacted, and like I said, wait till it's not a newsworthy story because it's happening everywhere.
Yeah, no, you're right. Um, we as Pennsylvanians are having a reckoning with the data center issue, and it does scare me how little my Lancaster community has talked about it. And I I'm grateful to the other people of Pennsylvania, because the people of Pennsylvania reminded me that it's not over till it's
Mm-hmm.
over.
Absolutely.
So I will keep fighting the data centers. Look, there are people out. There actually are. I don't know if they're bootlickers or not, but there are actually people that do want the data centers. They're fine with it. But I'm not okay with these conversations because we have a lack of regulation.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lack of control and accountability. Like, I'll revisit my opinion when we've protected the rights of the people firmly,
Mm-hmm.
when we have protected our privacy, our resources, our jobs.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I'm happy to have a more nuanced conversation about the construction of data centers and or the use of AI. But until we get to that point, I have to say no, because there's no controls here that are good enough. Like, we're getting BS proposals that, like, everything's breaking news with Josh Shapiro. It's like, dude, all we care about is this moratorium. Can you
Yeah.
just support Katie Moose bill already?
It's frustrating. It's so frustrating.
It is. But we're here because we have hope.
Absolutely. That's why I brought you on.
And speaking of being on, I think it's dinner time for me, so I should probably be
I was
off.
about to say we're over an hour and a half up time. Did you want to close out with anything before we end?
Just thank you for having me on.
Absolutely.
Maybe in the future we can have other. I mean, you're a PA group, so maybe we can rope you into the Green Party a little bit more closely with this sort of action. Um, I appreciate the work that you're doing to try and get the word out there to the public. And you clearly care about these issues we're experiencing as a country and state. And vote Tony Dastra this November. We're finishing up our ballot access. Keep your eyes on the news. And if you want to reach out to me, find my social medias. Dastra for PA is my Instagram. Very much on Instagram right now. And dashforpa.org is the website. If you have any questions, find the form at the bottom and send in a question. Once we're out of ballot petition season, I will probably be more responsive to those, but I look forward to the honest, earnest, and hopeful engagement of the people of Pennsylvania with the people of Pennsylvania.
Absolutely. And I hope when you make your way over to Pittsburgh on your campaign that can hopefully hang out with all the other Allegheny Greens and just really embrace what this campaign's all about.
Brody said live show.
The live Greenway Forward podcast, the first ever. His words,
I'm
not mine.
actually like, we'll be in touch, Brody.
I'm sure we will. Thank you so much for coming on, Tony. We're going to close it out. This has been episode 13. Episode 14 is probably coming in like 2029. So stay tuned
Yeah.
in 3 years for whenever I decide to reboot this and remember that it
It,
exists.
it's coming in September. What are you talking about?
Stay tuned. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you. Peace out.